Hey folks, it's me. So I need to talk about a little thing that's a big thing. That is going to be a big thing for a while. For me. And maybe it is for you. So if you are my size and you are, quite obese and have been for a long time, you probably notice that you walk differently. Our bodies were not meant to carry the amount of weight that I carry, for example. And sometimes I waddle, especially if I'm hurting. And I have a really hard time walking in heels. They're not meant to carry 350 pounds of Maria. I mean, Maria's not meant to carry 350 pounds of Maria. But pretty much any shoe isn't meant to. All of my shoes are worn out on the outside edges, on the bottom, because I walk on the sides of my feet. Now, see, I'm also tall. I'm 5'9". So when I sit, I don't put my feet on the floor most of the time because that puts just enough upward pressure. Most chairs aren't meant for somebody right here at my height. It's just enough to be uncomfortable. So I usually put my knees apart and then put the sides of my feet on the floor. And that's usually more comfortable. But I think after doing that, especially while driving, I spent a lot of time in my car, I started feeling this really horrible pain in my knee. And it's to the point where I've had to start physical therapy for it a couple months ago. And so I've been in physical therapy, and we had to address the waddle, which was really uncomfortable. Because, I call it the waddle because that's my endearment term for it. No offense to anybody else who does not like the term waddle. But it happens a lot with those of us who are carrying around this much weight that our joints are different. And our bodies are shaped differently. And that's what we had to go over in physical therapy. I really like my PT that I had that day, and I've had him before. He was actually my PT when I was going through aquatherapy the first time a couple years ago, where I started finally being able to move again after barely walking for 2 years. And so we get along well. And I was trying really hard not to be inappropriate with this. But I was walking and he was like, well, you gotta do this with your knees and you gotta pull them closer together. And I was like, I can't do that. And he was like, well, why? And I'm like, and he was like, does it hurt? And I was like, no, I have thighs. I was like, I have a lot of thighs. Like, there's only 2 of them, but they're very large thighs. One is courtesy of little Debbie. One is courtesy of Hostess. And I have lots of thighs. So, lots of thigh. And he was like, oh. And I'm like, I don't know how you want me to do this. And so we worked on it, and he gave me this pretty yellow tension rubber band. If you've never seen one, I think I got the blue one next to me because I was trying to do my other exercises earlier. But it's like this, but it's yellow. And it's not quite as long. But I have to tie it around my legs and practice walking. And I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to do that. Like, I laugh every time I think about it. And especially because he had me walk down the hallway of the Drake Center here in Cincinnati doing that. And I'm not gonna be able to use the yellow rubber band. But I brought it with me today, just in case. Because I went for my first hike this season, and my plan was to hit a paved trail. And we were talking about, how I have to now be conscious of every single step that I take until I can correct this enough that my knee stops hurting. While I'm sitting here, I have to constantly remind myself, put your feet flat on the floor. For God's sake, Maria, put your feet flat on the floor. Maria, put your feet on the floor. I'm a Post-it note girl. There's one on my lamp right here in front of me. Saying, put your feet on the floor. Because I always put my feet like the sides to the floor. And it's really hard to change these ingrained habits. I need one for my dashboard because that's where it's the worst in my car. And now I have to remind myself it's not one foot in front of the other. It's toes first. Toes first. Toes first. I've gotten the one foot in front of the other part down. But toes first. I gotta get my toes straight. And I'm not shuffling from the side of my foot and pushing from the side of my foot out, which is one of my problems. When you have heavy legs and a heavy body, lifting your feet off the ground is not as easy or first nature. And I remember being little and being able to run around the playground and no problems, right? Well, I'm definitely not little anymore. A little thing became a big thing, very big thing, and I struggle. And I just turn my feet back because now I'm turning them inwards. I'm overcorrecting. And it's hard. It's hard to constantly think of this simple little body movement. And I know that I'm not the only one dealing with this. I've got heavy family members who also have joint pain, and I see, their structure when they walk, and I'm like, okay, this is the same thing that I was up against a couple years ago when I could barely walk. I see so many folks that, they just, they waddle, and I feel it. I feel it right here, because I do. And I joke about it because I use humor to compensate for everything, but not everybody can, and when you've been dealing with the pain for so long and you've been feeling like this for so long and you don't have any hope of getting out of this pain, this discomfort, this life where your weight and your body have just betrayed you and it feeds off of each other. It may not be something that you can joke about, because it's the very source of your misery. So please don't think that I don't see that. I don't understand that when I joke about it in regards to me. But I do. I waddle. And I decided I was going to take one of these trails today that I have never taken because the others were swarmed. It was 47 in Cincinnati today and bright and sunny, and suddenly everybody thought, oh, look, summer. There are even people in shorts out on the trail. I was like, I don't know about you people. But I don't know if people who are not my weight, or maybe who even are my weight and who never do a trail like this, understand terrain momentum. When you're walking on a trail and you're going downhill, a very steep hill, your toes get shoved into the front of your shoes because they take all of your weight. Your feet are taking so much of your weight. You have a hard time sometimes remembering to keep your spine straight or even tilt it back so that way, especially if your front's heavy like I am, my curves and rolls and all that, it's going to cause momentum. If you're rushing or, God forbid, running down a hill, I cannot run. I've never been able to run. But even when I was skinny and 8 years old, I could never run. But you pick up momentum, and you start stumbling forward until sometimes you actually roll down the hill. Not that I would know anything about that. At least not from today, thankfully. And it's also hard when you're trying to go up and down wet terrain. And I was not familiar with this trail, so I did not know what to expect. It was rather hilly. Thankfully, it was rather short as well. At only 0.8 of a mile, the dog and I can handle this. Though I did have to stop multiple times to catch my breath because that's way too much for me. But I had a really hard time concentrating not only on making sure where I was stepping was safe to step, to make sure that it was someplace that wasn't going to send me cascading down the hill or sliding and falling on my face. Because that's what happens when you step down on wet leaves with, wet mud and soil underneath. Maybe somebody lighter isn't going to cause the kind of pressure slip that somebody my size has, but that was happening all day today. I was like, every time I take a step down on something that looked kind of wet, it was because I was pushing it further down, like it was more saturated underneath, and I was slipping out. And so I had to not only be aware for my safety on the trail like that, which is typical, that's just part of hiking, but I also had to keep my toes forward. Toes first, toes first, toes first. And I'm trying so hard. And it was a really great metaphor for everything else going on in my life that, the toes first is pretty much like my weight loss journey amongst all of these other things. Worrying about my dog who kept trying to run because he kept hearing other dogs echoing off the hills and the people, and worrying about him and making sure I'm not slipping, not being able to breathe because my asthma has been really bad because I gotta put down the stupid e-cigarette. And, all of these different things. And then now I'm trying to tackle walking toes first, feet flat, using my whole foot. It's kind of like my life right now. Trying to tackle grief and my mental health and, trying to get my family together and then suddenly my health, especially my weight loss. But it is what it is. So I felt really good afterwards, and then I ruined it all with a milkshake. I'm hitting that hormonal time of month. There was no saying no to the milkshake. But, it's in my app. I put it in my stupid app. I'm owning up to my milkshake. It's not like, I can lie about it. Who's that going to help? But, it's in my app. And maybe tomorrow I won't have a milkshake. Until next time.